All right, buckle up, because this one still gives me goosebumps, even months later. I mean, you know me, right? Just your average weekend warrior. Always chasing that perfect sunset hike, trying to escape the digital grind. But this was way beyond a sunset photo op. Hey everyone, welcome back. So, I'm still processing what happened. I went for a solo hike last Saturday. You know, the usual find myself in nature kind of thing. But what I found wasn't peace, it was something else. Something that shifted my perspective on, well, everything. I debated even sharing this, it's pretty intense, but I feel like I have to. You might not believe it, and honestly, parts of me still don't. But trust me, this is real. I'd been feeling the burn lately, you know? The classic millennial burnout. Work stress, the constant scroll, the pressure to be perfect online. My therapist suggested getting back to nature, grounding myself. So, I picked this trail, Emerald Ridge, a lesser-known spot in the foothills of the Sierras. It's beautiful but remote. I packed my usual gear, water, snacks, my trusty camera, and a headlamp just in case. The air was crisp, the sun was warm, and the trail was practically empty. Perfect. I started hiking, enjoying the solitude, the rustling leaves, the distant birdsong. I was maybe 2 miles in, winding my way through a dense section of oak and manzanita, when I noticed something off. A strange, almost metallic scent in the air, and a silence that felt heavy. Then I heard it. A faint, desperate whimper. It was coming from deeper in the brush, off the main trail. My curiosity, and maybe a little bit of that hero complex we all have, kicked in. I pushed through the thick foliage, my heart pounding a little faster. And then I saw it. A young deer, a doe, maybe a yearling, was trapped. Not in a snare, not by a predator's teeth, but by something far more primal, far more terrifying. A massive python, a constrictor, was wrapped around her, its coils tightening with each shallow breath the deer took. The snake's scales were a mottled green and brown, almost perfectly camouflaged against the forest floor. Its eyes, those cold, green eyes, were locked on the deer, and then briefly on me. The deer's eyes were wide with terror, her legs trembling. She was struggling, but it was a losing battle. The python's grip was relentless. I could see the muscles in its body rippling as it tightened its coils, the deer's ribs creaking under the pressure. I froze. I'm not going to lie, I was terrified. This wasn't a nature documentary. This was raw, brutal reality. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a desperate need to do something. But what could I do? I'm just a hiker, not a wildlife expert. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking, and tried to get a signal. Nothing. I was completely alone. I knew I couldn't just stand there and watch. I remembered a survival show I'd seen once, something about finding a sturdy stick. I scanned the forest floor, my eyes darting between the snake and the deer. I found a thick, fallen branch, about 5 feet long, and cautiously approached. The python hissed, its head swaying slightly, a warning. I knew I was taking a risk, a huge one. But the deer's desperate eyes, I couldn't ignore them. I started tapping the python's body with the branch, gently at first, then a little harder. My heart was pounding in my ears. The snake was agitated, but it didn't release its grip. It just shifted its focus, those cold eyes now fixed on me. I kept tapping, trying to find a vulnerable spot. It was like hitting a brick wall. The python's scales were tough, its muscles like steel cables. I knew I had to be careful. One wrong move and I'd be in serious trouble. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I managed to get the branch under one of the snake's coils, near its tail. I leveraged it, trying to pry the coil loose. The python hissed again, its body tensing. It shifted its grip, and for a terrifying moment, I thought it was going to strike. But then, slowly, the coil began to loosen. The deer gasped, her eyes widening. I kept pushing, my arms aching, my breath ragged. The snake was still strong, but it was losing its grip. Finally, after what felt like an impossible struggle, the python released the deer. It slithered away, disappearing into the undergrowth, leaving a trail of disturbed leaves and a lingering sense of dread. The deer lay there, panting, her body trembling. I approached cautiously, my heart still racing. She was alive, but barely. Her ribs were bruised, her legs weak. I gently touched her side, and she flinched but didn't run. I stayed with her for a long time, just talking to her, reassuring her. I didn't know what to do. I gave her some of my water, which she drank gratefully. After a while, she slowly stood up, her legs still wobbly. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a strange mix of fear and gratitude. And then, she turned and disappeared into the forest. I sat there for a long time, just trying to process what had happened. I felt a mix of exhaustion, relief, and a profound sense of awe. I had witnessed something truly primal, something that reminded me of the raw power of nature. I walked out of that forest a changed person. The world felt different, more real, more fragile. I realized how disconnected I had become from the natural world, how caught up I was in the digital noise. I don't know if I did the right thing. Maybe I should have just left the python and the deer to their natural cycle. But I couldn't. I couldn't just watch an animal suffer. This experience reminded me that we're all connected, that we're all part of this incredible, fragile ecosystem, and that sometimes we need to step outside our comfort zones to face the raw, unfiltered reality of the world around us. Wow, still getting chills thinking about that. Honestly, seeing that young deer caught like that, it was heartbreaking. I know nature can be brutal, but something about those eyes, that struggle, it just hit me. If you felt anything watching that, if you think that little deer deserved a chance, please smash that like button. Let's show some love for the wild things out there. And if you want to see more stories like this, more encounters, more of the raw, real side of nature, then hit subscribe. I'm going to be sharing more of my adventures, the good, the bad, and everything in between. Thanks for watching, and remember, respect the wild.